We've had lots of things go wrong. We've had employees stealing from some of our franchise locations. We've had break-ins. We've had staffing issues. We've had issues where the franchisor um, wasn't able to provide the support that we originally thought, and then we had to go back and forth with them. But with franchising, it's different because you're in a long-term relationship with these people. The franchisee and the franchise system, they have leverage over one another. And so when you're in a challenging situation, it is more beneficial for the parties to work it out than to fight to the death. When you are not aware that franchising is a viable option and is available to just the everyday person, somebody who just makes good decisions and has a lot of drive, can become a franchise owner. We all can choose to make good decisions, and we all can choose to work hard and have good work ethic. And so if you can do those two things, then anyone could achieve the American dream.
From multi-unit franchise owner to building the Franchise Brokers Association to over 200 brokers. In this episode, I got to sit down with Sabrina Wall, who is the CEO and founder of the Franchise Brokers Association. Now, she built the second largest franchise system for a commercial cleaning franchise in Central Florida and was also a partner in another franchise. In this episode, we unpack how she got involved in franchising, along with talking about her biggest challenges as an owner and how she went from struggling with her first franchise and to then building it into a successful business and really what it took to get there. And lastly, we talked about some new regulations that are being proposed for franchise brokers that Sabrina's being very outspoken about on a way to create regulations that actually help and don't hurt franchising as a whole. Now, if you want to buy a franchise in the next 12 months, you should check out my free franchise masterclass at franchiseempire.com/masterclass. And if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise or resale business, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory and you can schedule a free call to see what's available in your area. The link is also in the description below. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and building your empire doesn't happen overnight. My name is Tarek Johnson, and owning franchises is what helped me go from employee to employer and start building my empire for my family. So this podcast is for you, the empire builders. For those of you who want to build something that stands the test of time. This is for those of you who are crazy enough to believe that you can make the dream in your head come to life. This podcast is all about bringing you real people who are building real empires so you can get inside their mind and heart and get proven strategies and actionable insights that will catapult you to build, grow, and scale your empire. All right, welcome everyone to this episode of the Franchise Empire Show. I'm here with Sabrina Wall. It's really good to see you again. It's been a while.
It's nice to see you again too, Tarek.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I want to dive right in because by the time people are hearing this, they've already heard a custom intro about who you are and a little bit about your background. But, you know, you are the CEO of the Franchise Brokers Association that has tremendous impact, you know, through the brokers in your organization and the work that you do. But let's rewind for a second. How did you even get involved in franchising in the first place?
Sometimes life chooses you. I wouldn't have even known what a franchise was or that franchising was an option. Like if someone was telling me in school, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Franchising wouldn't have been something that I said because I didn't have any concept of what it is. But through a process of, running a business and having someone that I used to work with who was laid off and was then looking for her next venture, her next thing to do. And she didn't want to go back to working for corporate America. So she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, would you be interested in investing in a business with me? And we can be partners and we can do this venture together." We knew each other's work ethic, we liked each other, and we knew we could do well together, working in something that was our own. And so we started the process of looking for a franchise or looking for a business. Found some websites, so researched, found a lot of opportunities that we were interested in, and ultimately, I found out that you could become a franchise broker, and that and we found franchises that we were interested in, and so we used a franchise broker in that process. So I became a franchisee. At the same time I became a franchise broker, I decided to jump all in. And I was a part-time partner on one of them and then full-time on the franchise brokerage piece. And I just fell in love with the business because when you are not aware that franchising is a viable option and is available to just the everyday person, somebody who just makes good decisions and has a lot of drive, can become a franchise owner. And those two things are in all of our potential and control. We all can choose to make good decisions, and we all can choose to work hard and have good work ethic. And so, if you can do those two things, then anyone could achieve the American dream. And I didn't come from, a wealthy family or anything. We were very poor. And so it was not something that I knew was possible for me and was possible for others, but seeing it and going into the process, it just opened my eyes to what people could actually accomplish when they're given the right tools and teams to come around them and allow them to let out the potential that's already inside of them. So I fell in love with franchising very early on. It was exciting to learn about all these different businesses. It was exciting to help people find one that they ended up achieving independence with and became a franchise owner. I mean, it just was so rewarding to be able to invest and support that much care into people who wanted something more for their lives. And so I fell in love with it, and the rest is history. That's what, like 17 years ago. It's been a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what was your? How did you go about selecting? I mean, I know you said you worked with a franchise broker at that time. What business did you get involved in, and how did you go about selecting that business at that point in your life? Like, what was important to you, and what was kind of your criteria?
So I had a more, I guess, negative experience with a franchise broker, in that he didn't seem to really listen to me or make kind of take us seriously. I know we were young, but I didn't feel like through the process he was listening to what my needs were or what we needed. And so I started researching and researching. I found a business that was a franchise brokerage business. And because I had not a great experience with the person that I worked with, um, I said, "Well, I know I can do a better job than the experience that I had." And so I was drawn to franchise brokering just because I had a negative experience with, or not that it was negative. He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't listen to what our needs were. He didn't really explain the process well. He didn't really give me a lot of information. And this is a very long time ago. What brokers had at their available to use at that time was far less than what we have today. But so I just didn't have a great experience. I realized that you could become a franchise broker. And then I also, so I became one. And then I also did a, did something that I don't think you should I would never recommend for a franchise potential franchisee to do. I went on entrepreneur.com and I looked up the top franchises for commercial cleaning because it was a field that I could get into and it had, a recurring revenue. And I just thought, oh, this makes a lot of sense. It's something that we could do. We could have people, we know people we could hire, So we started down that path and we ended up becoming a franchisee of a commercial cleaning franchise called Janny King. And we grew that to be the second largest franchisees in the Central Florida market. And we did that because we worked with the franchise and helped the franchise kind of invested in us and helped us to grow and helped us to learn the skills that we didn't have before. But I didn't realize until afterwards that entrepreneur.com isn't necessarily the best way to research and evaluate a franchise business. And not that it's, and again, nothing wrong with it, but it's just a list. It's not how you would actually go through and evaluate the merits of the business. But I just didn't know any better at that time. So yeah, that's how I got into
There are
it.
a lot of people
There
that
are
do that.
so many people that do that, and we hear the stories afterward, or the people that went into a franchise and didn't do their research and didn't understand what they were getting into, and it wasn't a fit, so they end up getting out of it, and that's not long-term sustainable franchising. So we do kind of focus on ensuring that people understand that they've done their research and that they understand what they're getting into so that they can start that business on the best foundation where they're all working together and they know the players that they're working with, they know their strengths and weaknesses and are able to make the best decisions as a result of that.
So, our team have looked into a few hundred franchises and put together a list of 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million or more and that have a proven track record of both happy and profitable franchisees. So if you have a net worth of at least $150,000 and you want to see if the territory that you want is still available for any of these franchises, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, what was your, and I mean, you were a franchisee for a long time, for many years. What was your, I'm sure there were many, but what was your hardest moment or challenge as a franchisee, and how did you get through it?
Well, you're a business owner, so there are ample challenges. Um, when I first started, I didn't understand truly the value of the franchise. And so in the first 6 months of business, we kind of went off on our own and started recreating all the tools that we needed and just started building it like an independent business as opposed to a franchise. And so we were failing. It was not a good scene for our future. And the franchise, we were a unit franchisee of a master, and so the master franchise was local. So we went into their office and kind of held this meeting to confront them on this bad franchise that they showed that they sold us. And through that process, they were like, well, why are you recreating this systems? And why didn't you call when you had this problem? And why are you doing it this way? So they helped us to understand the error of our ways and began to kind of change our focus from doing it all on our own and working against them to working with them. And that was a key moment in my franchise experience because when you work, it's so natural for us to want to fight against each other. It's natural for us to want to be at odds with someone or to blame someone over there for our situation. It takes a lot more strength and courage to say, okay, wait, I'm in this situation because I made decisions that got me here. So I'm here, I'm going to face where I'm at, and now I'm going to make changes, use the tools and resources that I have to change my trajectory. And that's kind of what happened. We had to eat some humble pie. And then from there, we needed to work with them. And they invested in us. We were willing to do the work. They said, okay, we're going to help you. And so they started giving us troubled accounts. And through those troubled accounts, we were able to turn them around with their help. And then as they taught us those skills, we were able to do it again and again and again. And that's really how we grew as large as we did. So that was a big key experience. I mean, anytime you're running a business, you're going to face challenges. So, we've had lots of things go wrong. We've had employees stealing from some of our franchise locations. We've had break-ins. We've had staffing issues. We've had issues where the franchisor um, wasn't able to provide the support that we originally thought, and then we had to go back and forth with them. But with franchising, it's different because you're in a long-term relationship with these people. And so when and you both have leverage. The franchisee and the franchise system, they have leverage over one another. And so when you're in a challenging situation, it is more beneficial for the parties to work it out than to fight to the death. And so when you have a franchise that despite the struggles, they're gonna say, "Okay, let's work on this. Try to give you some support. Let's try to help you get in alignment." And when that happens, you have to face some of the things you've done wrong, and you have to face some of the things that you didn't act on. And everybody has to be accountable. But through that accountability, you're stronger. You all grow, and you get to the next level together. So yeah, there's lots and lots of challenges, but if you can always redirect from not being against the other person, but saying, okay, how am I accountable in it? And how can I make this better for me and them? Let's focus on those solutions. Then you'll find a lot of people willing to help in a franchise because you not only have the franchise system, you also have all of the other franchisees, you have a lot, you have vendors, you have so many people that are there to call on to help you to thrive in any situation and work through any challenge that you face. And that is really the power of franchising, that you are not alone. You have a community. You have people who want the best for you and want what you want.
Yeah, and it's you said, you said the word accountability. It's interesting because in a franchise system, it's very easy to just go want to blame the franchisor for all of your problems. And sometimes it's warranted, right? Like in terms of like, hey, I need more support, not getting the support I need, or whatever it is. But what's interesting to me and what I always share with the people that we work with is, well, anytime that you blame someone else or step into that victim mentality, you literally take away all of your power to do anything about it. Because if that person is responsible for your failure, then you have now taken away all of your power to be responsible for your success. Whereas it's like, how can you succeed in spite of, or despite, so anyways, I think it's a really important point. And um, really, it's just so easy to adopt the blaming mentality. I mean, I fall into it plenty of times, but just, try to check myself, like, how am I showing up? How am I responsible for these results? Oh, well, you hired that person. Oh, well, you didn't check in to make sure they understood the instructions, or hey, they told you the deadline was this, but you actually missed the email, or whatever it is. But or you didn't read the agreement. You signed it, but you didn't actually read. You didn't actually read the fine print. So there's all those moments where we can just, take accountability. How did you go from becoming a franchise broker through a different organization, um, franchisee, to being like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start my own franchise broker association and business. I mean, that is a massive undertaking. I can't even imagine. Hey, so if you want to figure out if you should buy a franchise and learn the fastest and easiest way to figuring out the best franchise to buy and everything you need to know about the process, then you'll want to go get access to our Franchise Buyers Academy. In our Franchise Buyers Academy, you'll get a behind the scenes look into specific franchises and exactly how much money they are making. You'll get simple formulas for finding money making franchises and a blueprint on how to scale them into a franchise empire that can be sold for a lot of money later on. You'll be able to finally answer the question on, should I buy a franchise? Now you can get access at franchiseempire.com/FBA. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. Well, I am extremely collaborative. So my level of collaboration is like off the charts. I always want to bring everybody into what I'm doing. I always want to brainstorm and work on problems. I'm very innovative and collaborative. Those are just kind of foundational, fundamental characteristics. So what happened is I started creating all of these tools to operate in my business as a franchise broker. And I started sharing them. I started sharing them with other brokers that I had met. I started finding people working with franchisors to gather more information than what was typical. And so I started building these presentations and databases of franchise details. And I took that information, created it, and then I started giving it to these other brokers. And I went to, I started doing that, what happened is we had all these different iterations of the content. So now one database with one person had different information than the database with another person. And so it was getting all messed up. And so I went to the network that I was a part of at the time and I said, hey, we're using these tools and they're getting messy because everybody's updating them differently. If we could have one central place that they existed, then we would even help you to update them. But we want to have this one central place so that we're not duplicating efforts and then creating errors in the iterations of all these people that have it. And the organization told me, no, like, we don't want that. We're not interested in taking that on. And we don't want you calling franchisors and getting more information. We're not interested in that. And so please stop. So we basically chose to part ways at that moment because I didn't understand why they wouldn't want to help. It just made no sense to me. And now it makes a lot more sense because I know how much work it is. But then it made no sense because I was feeling like, well, why wouldn't you want to help us? Why wouldn't you want to connect us? Why wouldn't you want to give us better information so that we can do good for the people that we're helping in this process? So this started because I had a broken heart. I loved the work that I did. I didn't think it was at the level that it should be based on the types of clientele and or candidates that we work with. We we're working with people who are high net worth individuals or they've saved up a substantial amount and so they're not looking for kind of notes on a scribbled on a pad. They're looking for professional materials and we didn't have that. And so I said, okay, well, if you're not going to do it and you don't want to do it, then I'm going to create an association that allows us to share our information. So when it first started, all it was a sharing repository. It was just a place where we could have that one centralized location of the franchise details and information. And then we had some groups where we could all talk together about best practices and share support for each other. So that's really all it was. But immediately upon kind of announcing it, we had a lot of traction. Many brokers truly wanted that as well. They were hungry for that. They wanted to do the best job that they could, but they didn't have the resources available to them. So that's how it started. We as a community just pulled together, started contributing, and had this central location for the information, and it has blossomed and continues to develop and grow so that we can truly have good information to help people ask good questions in the process.
Yeah, and give us a snapshot into FBA, Franchise Brokers Association. How many employees do you guys have? How many brokers do you have? How many franchisors do you guys work with? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have just shy of 200 brokers. We have two types of franchisors. So we have about 550 that are in one category, and then about another 400 or so that are in a separate category. So in total, almost about 1,000. And then for what was the other question?
How many employees?
We have 25 people that work here, and yeah, that's what we do.
Grown from one little idea to a pretty sizable operation.
Yes.
Yeah, and what? Why a lot of a lot of people in the industry use the term franchise consultant, and a lot of organizations. Why use the term franchise broker? And what's your take on the franchise broker versus franchise consultant conversation? Because I think it's really confusing to buyers. You got some people saying franchise coach, some saying franchise consultant, some saying franchise brokers, and it leaves the people who were serving or being served in a weird position where they're like, what the hell is the difference?
Yeah. That has been a topic of debate for a very long time. So we just use the term that we're called by the FTC. So the FTC says we're franchise brokers. So our position is that we just use the term franchise broker because that's the legal term. What we do is more akin to a franchise recruiter than it is any of the other titles. The consultant title, it's nice, and we do kind of help people to figure out who they are and what they're doing, but they're not paying us. So typically a franchise broker is not being compensated for their services, and so because of that we can't really say that we're a consultant or that we're a contractor for them because they're not paying us. The franchisor, the franchise system, is the one that actually pays our fee, and they pay that fee upon finding a successful person who they can have invited to join into their system. So just it is confusing. I don't know that it's going to be less confusing anytime soon, but I don't know. The consultant sounds better, and it's fun to say. It's also, we do help them to kind of sort through. So there is that self-reflective process that a lot of consultants do, but right, franchise broker is just the legal term.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally prefer the term franchise broker. I think it's more transparent because when someone thinks about a broker, there's an association and a spirit of transparency in that, okay, a broker is going to kind of be in the middle, matching, and typically gets compensated based on that transaction. So franchise recruiter is probably even more transparent. But yeah, I prefer the term franchise broker. I don't like the term franchise consultant because I think it's deceptive. Now, there's people are throwing out the term franchise advisor, which I think is even more deceptive.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that one.
Yeah, because it's like, well, no, you're, and and it's not. There are other industries that do it. I mean, you have financial advising, where that was my background being a financial advisor. But financial advisors are often in a very similar position where they're only making money if they're referring an annuity or placing you with a mutual fund, or so I don't think it's something that's only happening in the franchise world, but I would love to see more transparency overall, which is a great pivot to, I know that a topic that is important to you. I'm pretty green on all of the regulation stuff. I've caught some snippets of some of your content overall, but I'm not in the know. So I'm actually excited to have this conversation so that I can be educated more on kind of what's happening. But I guess so what's happening with this regulation and stuff, and I know that you're pretty passionate about that it needs to be done in a different way.
Yeah, so there's two things that are happening in our industry right now. We have um, one, the California 919. It is a law that California is proposing that would make a third party seller have to disclose information and register in within the state. And so that's, disclosure and registration seems at first glance to be not a big deal. But as you go deeper into the regulation, it is the way it is written is pretty extreme and, in our opinion, potentially harmful to not just even franchise brokers, but to anyone in the development space. So, lead vendors, anyone who's helping with the due diligence or research process for a franchise candidate. And it also, this bill is sponsored by the IFA, the International Franchise Association, who had a task force that worked on the bill for some time, and they kind of collaborated and joined in to create what they wanted to present and share with the senator that's sponsoring it, or that is the author of it. So the senator is Senator Umberg in California, and I think that because they had this task force and they had various parties on it, the IFA felt that they were making they were having a good representation of all parties, and I think that was their intent, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that that was their intent. But how it turned out was pretty extreme and not something that we should just agree with. A couple of the things in the bill are that are very alarming is that it makes improper disclosure illegal and proper disclosure nearly impossible. And what I mean by that is it's saying that you have to disclose these items in the document, but if you but you have to update those items. Those items are in real time. So if you're thinking of a business owner and you think of the things that change in a daily basis, there's so many things that change. And what this disclosure is kind of doing is saying that as these things are changing, um, we're not taking like a look back in time, which is how traditional franchising is done. Traditional franchising looks at the previous year's data. This bill is actually looking at now, this moment, and how many services are you providing today, and what compensation are you receiving today, and who are the people that you have worked with in the past. So it's basically saying asking for real time updates. So if you think of running your business day to day as your services or your compensation, or these things change all day long, especially in our field, and they're just constantly changing. And so the bill is saying you have to update all of these things. And the consequence, if you don't update them, is that the person that buys the franchise is able to come back and say, you didn't properly register. So you have violated the law. And as you violated the law, they're eligible to have the entire franchise investment returned to them by somebody who wasn't a party to the contract, didn't make the decision at all. The person is being asked to do these extreme regular disclosures, and it just kind of sets up the person, these parties that are not involved in the situation, as the fall guy, is how it kind of landed. So if you think of it this way, if you are someone who is, let's say you like setting people up on dates, and you're like, oh, you know what, you guys would be good together, let me set you up on a date. And so you do this, have two friends and they go on a blind date, and they date for a while, and then after they date they decide, you know what, let's take this to the next level, let's get engaged. They get an officiant, they get marriage counseling, and then they go ahead and get married. So what this law is essentially saying is, even like, even though they go in that relationship, they've gone through the process, let's say they get divorced eventually, things don't work out as planned and they get divorced. This law is saying, well, now you, everybody that was involved in that upfront process, the person who set them up, carries the same liability as the person who they went into the marriage agreement with. So it's making the referral source, or the the blind date person, carry the same consequence as the franchise that is the one signing the contract and delivering on the contract. So it's just very intense. You wouldn't think that those two things are aligned, that they shouldn't be joined, because this party over here that sets them up on the blind date, they can't tell them, hey, no, you guys aren't allowed to get married. You're not allowed to do this. They can't, they're not giving them the paperwork. They're not making that transaction happen. They're not helping them to actually become a couple. Those decisions ultimately lie with the people that are deciding that, and the franchise broker does not have that control. So this is a something that's alarming, and something that we are trying to educate people about.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what the I'm curious what you think the solution is, because in I think maybe surprisingly, I feel a little bit different in the sense that I think franchise brokers and consultants should be held more accountable. And maybe you feel that way too, but just in a different manner, because it's unfortunate. And one of the reasons why we work differently, at Franchise Empire, and what we do is because we're all about empowering people with the tools that they don't normally get. We tell people you need to do a pro forma before you buy, and that might kill the deal. It might cause them to not buy. But if you do a pro forma beforehand, you're going to have a better idea of what you're walking into. When franchisors say, "Nope, sorry, our process is group validation only," and we don't want you calling franchisees. I get it. I get why, and I understand it. And when I was a franchisee, at a certain point, I was like, I'm not returning the phone calls anymore, because there were just so many. But the guidance we give our clients is great. Do group validation, but you must speak with 5 to 10 individual franchisees one on one. And unfortunately, there are consultants, brokers, whatever it is out there that they're intentionally letting people move forward without the proper, they're not slowing them down, right? They're not slowing them down saying, hey, wait a minute, you might check on this first, check on this first. So isn't there some level of accountability there? Or what's your perspective on that?
There's a difference in being accountable for bad acts or misrepresentations. That is different than being accountable for administration errors. So the way the law is set up is for administration errors. It's not tying bad acts to the issue. So if it was able to correct that, then we would be having a totally different conversation. But that's not how it is designed. So that's number one. Number two, the broker should be giving more services. The broker can provide additional help, helping the potential franchisee to be more and more knowledgeable about the franchise options that are available to them. But the broker is not the one that is doing the due diligence. So even if they do or don't do that, the way that the law is written, it actually harms the brokers that do more, not the other way around. And we are in agreement with you. We do a lot more in the education and kind of qualifying and making sure people truly understand the way that it's written. It actually it makes you list your services. And while that might seem like no big deal, when you list your services and someone says, well, you listed this service, but I didn't receive that service, now the broker becomes liable for not having that service be fulfilled. So it actually, the brokers that do more, if you say more in the disclosure, you're putting yourself at risk. So it's actually harming the good brokers, and the brokers that do less. It actually creates kind of a different paradigm where they're more protected, not less protected. So, yeah, I agree. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm standing up and saying, no, 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 no. We need to take a step back and realize what's happening here. We don't want to punish the brokers that are really helping people understand that what their options are and ask good questions and self evaluate and self reflect. And that's how it's currently stated.
And so, what do you think the solution is, or what do you see needs to be changed? And is this bill only California based? Because you said California proposed it, or this is intended to be nationwide?
It's California, and then depending on how it goes, they're going to work on recommendations. I guess that's the other bill. So the other bill is, it's not really a bill. It's NASA, which is the National Association of Securities Administrators. Wait, the National, I have it wrong. NASA is they basically are the entity that provides guidance to each of the states on how those franchise regulators should what they could should consider about the regulations for their individual states. So NASA is taking was taking public comment in the May June timeframe. And so NASA was basically trying to hear from the public about their experience with franchise brokers, and they're working on this model franchise broker act. And this act would, again, give the clarity or recommendations to each of the states about how they should handle franchise brokers. So the solution is I'm actually doing a lot of work to speak with the regulators and educate them about the other areas of the law that maybe they're not as clear about because it's not their business. So where I'm working with them, I actually just had a conversation with a very influential person at NASA who has said that they do want to collaborate with me and with us, and that they will would like to listen to the feedback and help have a clear picture for this. I personally think that there's a lot that we can do to help franchise brokers to have some levels of education that maybe they don't have. I think there's a lot that we can do to help franchisees after they become a franchise a franchise owner in the system. I think there's a lot that we can do to help the create kind of a standard of ethical practices within our industry. And this situation of the regulation, here's the silver lining: it brought together competitors. So all these other broker network leaders have joined forces, and we're working together to help have these conversations. And hopefully, even after the California 919 decision is made, hopefully we'll be able to continue supporting some of these standards for the industry and help more people to understand these are the things you want to do and these are the things you don't want to do, and here's how we can make a really good situation um, for our industry. There's a lot that can be done, and I've me, I've got like tons of ideas. So I'm hopeful that the parties in the various broker organizations are willing and able to work on setting some of those standards, because I think it'll be very beneficial for all of franchise brokering. And I know there are several parties that are more willing and several that are less willing. So we'll see how it all pans out. But I'm going to keep trying to encourage them, and I'm willing to share information that, how we've done things to help them, support the best practices within franchise brokering.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to keeping up with everything and seeing how it all pans out. Especially because what we do. We're in such a different role and kind of spot. Like I'm technically not a franchise broker. Obviously we have some on the team that that we work with. So and we do things very very differently. So yeah, I'll definitely need to keep up with what's happening and so that we can make sure to just stay with the times and the regulation. I'm used to being in regulated businesses, having come from the investment industry too. All the licenses and disclosures and oh yes, I remember all of those things. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Sabrina.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tarek.
Absolutely. Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.